What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. Today I'm doing player predicted prices for the 2020-21 season. Got no idea when FPL is launching, when we're going to find these players' prices out for real. But a few people asked me to do this video. One even said I got quite a few right last year. So I thought I'd do it again. Going to go through 5 quite popular players, including Trent Alexander-Arnold, Martial and Aubameyang. And I think some of my predicted prices are going to be a little bit lower than a lot of people are saying, especially around Trent Alexander-Arnold. So it'd be interesting to get your opinions in the comments below. One other thing, I'm using a different intro for this. I'm using the intro background that I use for my streams. I figure it's just a little bit more interesting than the one that I use on normal videos. So let me know what you think about that. And if you're interested in signing up to Patreon, I have overhauled that, changed the pricing structure, and now offering exclusive content on there as well. Not that anything from my normal channel is going away. In fact, there's going to be even more next season. So I'm excited to get to the next season. But before we get there, let's predict some player prices. So let's start off with the man himself, Trent Alexander-Arnold, 7 million in the 2019-20 season. Obviously, we saw that Robertson was the same price last year and Van Dijk was 0.5 million cheaper at 6.5. At least that's what they started on. And I think Trent is probably one of the most sought after player prices that people want to see. It's one of the most discussed player prices I've seen on FPL Twitter and stuff like that. So let's talk about it. Now, I think, there's no getting away from the fact he's 100% going to have to get a price rise this year. No doubt about that. I'm just not sure it's going to be much more than 8 million. Now, let me talk about that a little bit. No FPL defender has ever been above 8 million. Vidic and Baines, at least I don't think they have. Vidic and Baines were both 8 million at one point in years gone past. But since then, we've not had anyone near that. A few 7 millions. Obviously, 6.5 has been quite a popular price. But 8 million plus has never happened as far, at least higher than 8 million has never happened. So my first thing is, are they really just going to go from him being 7 million to suddenly putting his price up to, like, I've seen people say 9.5 million. Now, I get why, because of the whole he scored similar amount of points to midfielders. But 9.5 all the way from 7 or 9 million, I just don't think that's going to happen. Now, 8.5 million I could get behind a little bit more. I think there is a chance that happens, but I'm going to put my money on 8 million. Here's why. 19 attack and returns is incredible. But is that so good that he's going to be able to repeat that next year? I think that's one thing they have to consider. No doubt he will get a lot of attack and returns. I'm sure he'll be one of the highest, if not the highest defender again next year. Is he going to get 19 though? That's it. That means in every other game week, essentially, there's 38 game weeks. In every other one, he's got an attack and return. So he is that good. So he should be priced higher. Certainly shouldn't be 7 million. But 9 million for a defender, I just don't see it. One thing I will say, Liverpool only got 14 clean sheets last year. The year before, they got 21. So obviously, if we add that on, that's obviously a huge increase. But he got 210 points this year. That is less than Robertson got last year, in the season before last, so 2018-19. Robertson scored 3 more points. He got 213. Trent only got 210. Now, like I said, the clean sheets thing, if they got the same amount, he would have been much higher than 213. The thing is, they didn't. So is he going to go? So Robertson got pushed up to 7 million after breaking the FPL record. Trent has not broken it. And now all of a sudden, he's going to be like 9.5 million. No way. Not for me, I don't think. I really don't see FPL doing that. He could be 8.5. I wouldn't say that's an impossibility. But I'm going to go for 8 million. I think a 1 million increase before you see if he can do that again, I think that's fair. And a lot of people are going to say, well, an 8 million midfielder scored that many points and you'd buy him. And I get that. But if you put Trent up to like 9 million, why are you going to choose him over the midfielder? I just don't think many people would necessarily want to do that. Now, some people will say you should make people have that choice. But if you had Trent for 9 and maybe Son for 9, the reason you would pick Son is because you can pick up a cheaper defender who's going to score more in most scenarios than the cheaper midfielder. So it's not just Trent at 9 versus Son at 9. It's Trent and a 5 million midfielder versus Son and a 5 million defender. And usually, around those kind of prices, the defender's a better value. So that's why I don't think his price is going to go up 2 million. I just don't see 9 million, 8.5 potentially. So, and the other thing is, actually, what I'm obviously talking about him, if they price him at 9... Robertson scored less than he scored the season before when he got bumped up to 7. So is Robertson going to stay at 7? A £2 million difference between two Liverpool defenders. There is no way there is that much of a difference between them. So that's another reason I don't think they're going to put Trent up, because I don't think they can. They could try and justify putting Robertson up. But I think when you break the record and then the next season you don't get that close to it, you can't then put his price up. I don't think. So for me, Robertson scoring less points than last year, he'll probably stay at 7. So I just don't see how much you can put Trent up. Also, if you look at points per match, Trent got 5.5 million and Robertson was 5. 0.5 points per match difference. Over 38 game weeks, if they both played all those games, that's 19-point difference. Is that worth like 1.52 million? I don't think it is. So for me, I'm putting my money on 8 million. I wouldn't be surprised if it was 8.5. I would be shocked if it's any more. So a bit like Trent, Aubameyang has been talked about a lot. And that's because a lot of people, myself included, think there's a good chance he could change to a midfielder in FPL this season. Now, let's get the stuff out of the way. I don't necessarily think he should be a midfielder because he does, if you think of Aubameyang, you think of a striker, you think of a forward. So being a midfielder would be a little bit weird. But we know that FPL have not moved yet. They could do it this year, and then that would be a completely different, bit of a game changer, really. But they haven't moved the likes of Sterling, the likes of Salah, the likes of Mane to forwards in previous seasons. They start on the wing on paper. Now, whether they come in central or not hasn't really mattered so far. They start on the wings on paper, and therefore they're classed as midfielders. Now, if you look at Aubameyang, if you go on Transfer Market, for last season, the 2019-2020 season, he has started more than 50% of his games either on the right or left wing, not as a central forward. Now, you can sit there and tell me that next year he could be a forward. Maybe Arsenal will play Pépé and Saka on the wings next year, and Aubameyang will be a forward. Lacazette will be on the bench most of the season. Maybe that will happen, but we don't know that will happen. All we know is what happened last year, and that tends to be how FPL do their pricing, especially all their positions as well, especially when an even bigger majority of those right-wing, left-wing games have been since Arteta came in and in the second half of the season. So that's even more reason to list him as a midfielder. Now, again, not saying he should be, but I think when you look at the kind of precedent that FPL have kind of set themselves, that's probably where he should be listed as a midfielder. There's a bigger conversation to have about whether the likes of Aubameyang, Salah and stuff should be made into forwards. I talked about that on another video, and to be honest, I actually don't think they necessarily should be. But you can go and watch that video on my other channel if you want to. But for me, I think he's going to be changing to a midfielder. Now, for the last 2 seasons, he's scored over 200 points. He was 11 million last year, 11 million the year before. I think he gets a price bump this year. Definitely, if he's a midfielder, he 100% gets a price bump. I think it will just be 0.5 million. 200 points is great. And of course, if he was a midfielder, without looking into the bonus too much, because forwards get a higher amount of bonus for goals, without looking into that too much, obviously he would have scored more as a midfielder. He would have got clean sheet points and also the extra point for the goal, so 5 points instead of 4. So unless they've made any changes to that, which I would highly doubt, he's going to score more points as a midfielder. But when I'm thinking the likes of De Bruyne could be 12 million, Mane 12 million, Salah 12.5 million still, I don't think you put Aubameyang up to those same prices, because once you do, the majority of people will just go for those players. So I think you want to make Aubameyang a little bit more enticing. Now, a lot of people will sit there and tell me, look, he would have scored like 230 points if he was a midfielder, 100% he's in. But you've got to realise this is a more broader game where a lot of people don't think like that. So I think if you put him at 12, you just make De Bruyne, Salah and Mane too appealing. Whereas if you leave him at 11.5, then you've got a bit of thinking to do, especially if the fixtures are a little bit mixed for kind of all those players that I just mentioned. So for me, he probably should be put in as a midfielder, only given how FPL have worked before. Look, we can talk about putting them in as forwards in another video or another stream, but I think he should be put as a midfielder, and I think he will get a price rise. I just think it'll be 0.5 million, so from 11 to 11.5. So Nick Pope up next, the top scoring goalkeeper in 2019-2020, 170 points. His previous high was 152, and he was still 4.5 million then. So I do think with 170, he has outgrown that 4.5 million price bracket. We saw last season, there weren't too many goalkeepers in that 4.5 that were still, known as being good. Obviously, some of them still did really well, but all the likes of Foster and players like that, they were all put up to 5 million. I think Fabianski was 5 million as well. And they've generally been in previous seasons kind of superheroes of that 4.5 million price mark. So it was probably a little bit lucky that Pope stayed there. So I definitely think he's going to get a price increase. And again, a bit like Trent, I see people saying he should be 5.5 million or he will be. I really just don't think that's going to happen. The problem is when you do that, you put him into premium goalkeeper pricing. Now, you can turn around to me and say, and it'd be a fair argument, he was the top scoring goalkeeper last year. Why should he not be priced like a premium goalkeeper? But we know, FPL is almost, it's like, you should be having fun with it, right? And paying 5.5 million, similar to a David De Gea or maybe an Alisson or an Edison, for a Burnley goalkeeper just doesn't sit right with me, which is why I don't think he'll be priced at 5.5. Also, 170 is great. 15 clean sheets. Are Burnley going to do that again? I mean, they could do. We know how well they defend. But his previous best was 11 clean sheets. You take those 16 points off, and then suddenly you're down to 154 without even taking into account bonus points and stuff. So then he maybe loses even fewer points or more points. And at that stage, would you say that then he's still worth 5.5 million? I don't think you would. So his previous high was 152 points. That got him a 4.5 million price tag. We know that FPL have upped goalkeeper prices slightly, but is an extra 18 points worth $1 million on his price tag? I don't think so. I think you price him at 5 million. I think they will price him at 5 million. And you see if he can repeat that. If he repeats it, 170 plus points, top scorer and goalkeeper again next year, then maybe you do put him at 5.5. But I think for now, that's too much of a jump for one season. So for me, he'll be 5 million. But let me know in the comments below if you disagree. So I'm starting to get a little bit worried in my predictions now because I have kind of gone a bit lower on the scale. We did see last year, in terms of like attacking fullbacks like Ricardo Pereira and Matt Doherty, they had quite big price increases. So Ricardo was 6 and so was Doherty as well. And I was quite surprised that they were that highly priced. So maybe I'm kind of underestimating FPL a little bit. Maybe they'll put all these players up another 0.5 million other than what I've said, just to make it even harder to pick your squads. So Martial could be definitely someone who's priced at 9.5, but I think there's a chance he gets a 9 million price tag. So his last year price was 7.5. So that was in 2019-2020. And the next season, I think 9 million, which would be a 1.5 million price increase. Now, he did have a great season. He was priced at 7.5 million to start, like I said, as a midfielder, which is why he did so good as well. One of the reasons he did so good. He hit that 200 points mark, but we have to remember, again, not taking into account bonus points because that would affect things a little bit. But you take off the point for the clean sheet. You take off the points for the extra goal as well. He scored 17 goals, so straight away that's 17 points gone. Potentially, again, other than looking at bonus points, potentially. So you put him as a forward and he would have scored probably less than 200 points last year. And then suddenly you're thinking, is he worth 9.5 million at that price? Now you have to be careful with Man United players because if you price them too low and they start off really well, their price just skyrockets so quickly. So you can't underprice them by too much. So I think 9 million is absolutely going to be the minimum that he is. The reason I think it's that and not 9.5 is 9.5 million would be a 2 million increase. Not saying that can't be done, but that's a big, big increase. He scored 200 points as a midfielder, would have been less as a forward. Vardy scored 210 this year. He scored 174 the season before and was priced at 9 million again. So he's the kind of benchmark that I've got with Martial. The only thing I could say why he could be 9.5 million, even 10, I mean, would we really say that 10 is a bad price for him? I don't know if we would. But I think the only reason I could see 9.5 or maybe even 10 is because, yes, he only scored 200 as a midfielder and as a forward that would have been less. But Bruno Fernandes was only in the team from January and Paul Pogba was injured for a lot of the season. And yes, Martial did well before then, but he did really well when they were in the team. Obviously, we saw the hat-trick against Sheffield United since lockdown. So Martial looked like a really good pick in the second half of the season, or at least since lockdown. Even though he was doing well before, he did really well when he came back, and his points per match were really high as well. I think he almost matched Mane, or got very close to him, and Sterling as well, for a much cheaper price. So 100% he'll be a forward this year. No doubts about that in my mind at all. He played as the number 9 for Man United. There's almost no argument to be had. I think Rashford will be put as a midfielder and probably Greenwood too. So he definitely has to have a price increase as well. 7.5 was underpriced in the end, but obviously 7.5 was probably a good price because up until Fernandes came in, Man United didn't look great. He still got points, but not as many as he probably would have if Fernandes was there for the whole season if Pogba wasn't injured. So definitely going to a forward to me. 9 million might be slightly underpriced, but I'm just gouging it from Vardy's price basically. I wouldn't be surprised by a 9.5 just because, especially if Man United get Sancho, their attack is going to probably be quite devastating next year in terms of an FPL point of view. So 9.5 would probably be fair, but I do think there's an outside chance of a 9 million. Okay, going to talk about Pépé because basically I wanted to talk about someone that was going to get a price drop this year. And I mean, Pépé 100% has to be cheaper. There's some other players on the list as well that I think could be in there, which I'm not going to go into huge detail, but Firmino, for me, should get a price drop. I think he was like 9 or 9.5 last year. I think he should be 8. Now, I know in the Liverpool attack, the 8 million kind of forward. I know he plays almost like as a false 9. Salah and Mane are the ones that get forward and central. But Firmino's still in and around the box. At 8 million, suddenly you have to start thinking, well, could I, if Liverpool's fixtures are great, for example, at the start of the season, what's everyone going to do? Salah, Mane, Trent, Salah, Trent, Robertson. It's always going to be the same like that with Liverpool players. Whereas you price Firmino at 8 million and suddenly you might actually give him some consideration. So I think he has to drop. I think Pogba could drop because so many of the other Man United players just look like better options now. He's got no penalties to fall back on either. Milivojevic, I think, is a really high price. I know he's a penalty merchant, but I think he should be lower. Kane could get a slight drop, maybe 0.5 million, but his form since lockdown was actually pretty good. I think he scored like 6 goals in 8 games or something like that. So I don't know if he would definitely get a price drop. Moise Kean at Everton as well, Sigurdsson too. But Pépé for sure has probably been, from an FPL point of view, one of the flops of the season. 9.5 million was hugely overpriced. He was the top scorer in Arsenal midfielder, but that really wasn't hard to do. And the problem is, I guess, rotation was a problem. He didn't really play consistent minutes. And at 70 million plus, you've got to think that Arsenal bought him for a reason. Now, it's not to say that players aren't bought for high fees and then fail. We've seen that at Man United. Like Di Maria came into the team and didn't really do that well. Not to say that he was a flop himself, but he flopped at Man United and didn't ever really do what we were all hoping he would do. So Pepe's been the same, but it's the first season. They've got a new manager in there now in Arteta. Maybe that can help him. We've seen glimpses of how good Pepe can be, like cutting inside from that right-hand side, left-footed, curling shots into the top left-hand corner. It'd be nice to see a few more of them next year from an FPL point of view. So I do think he could still be a good option next year. You don't want to severely underprice him. Like, you don't want to put him like a 7, 7.5. That'd be way too much of a drop. But I think he could go as low as 8 million. Now, who's going to be around the 9 million? We could see like Son, Rashford around that kind of price. So you don't necessarily want to price him so high that he's then not an option, because you might as well just go for these other players that we know are consistent, we know are going to score points. At 8 million, I think there's suddenly a conversation to be had about maybe including him in our teams. Potentially 8.5 million as well, but at 9.5 or 9 million, not going anywhere near him. I think he got 5 goals, 6 assists last year in 2004 minutes. So it wasn't a hugely great score, but I think we did see some potential. And under Arteta, if he was nailed on, I might consider him even more. So Arsenal midfielders just aren't going to be popular anyway next year, so I think you price him to be at least part of the conversation. He has to have a price drop, at least 8.5, but I'm going to bet on 8 million. That's it for this video. Let me know what you think about using this background for the intros and outros. I think it's a little bit more interesting than the one that I usually use. Also, let me know what you think about my price predictions. I actually just put out a tweet on Twitter just then asking what people thought I had priced Trent at in my price predictions. A lot of people actually said 8 million, which is interesting because I've seen so much talk about I'll buy him if he's 8.5. He's going to be at least 8.5. He could be 9. But now the chat seems to have come back around to 8 million. So it looks like we're all kind of in sync on that. Let's see what happens. He could be 8.5. I really do think 8 million would probably be not necessarily a fair price, but it would be more kind of true to what they usually do with player prices. Not to say they can't do something different, but I think 8 million is around the right price. So let me know what you think about the predictions that I made. Let me know if there's any others you want me to talk about in the comments section. I'm not going to do another video on this, but I'll happily reply to some of the ones you want to talk about in the comments below. And if you want to check out Patreon, like I said, there's mini leagues, there's shout outs on streams, there's exclusive videos and all that kind of stuff. If you want to check that out, see the prices and all that, link in the description below. Get ready in time for the season starting on September 12th. Otherwise, like the video if you've enjoyed it. Subscribe if you're new around here. Hit that notification bell. So many videos coming in pre-season and during the FPL season. You're going to want to be subscribed. Otherwise, I will catch you again soon. Cheers all.